Good evening, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us for our Coyote Safety Virtual Town Hall. I am Betty Martinez Franco, your Irvine City Council member for District 5, and I'm happy to have so many neighbors joining us tonight. Here in Irvine, coyotes are part of the natural environment, and it's not uncommon to see them near our neighborhoods, parks, and open spaces. And tonight, it's about giving you practical information and tips on how to better understand coyote behavior, what to do during an encounter, and what steps we can all take to help keep our families and pets safe. We are fortunate to have Officer Chelsea Garcia with Irvine Police Department Animal Services here with us tonight to share her expertise. After the safety presentation, we'll open up for questions. So, Officer Garcia, thank you again for being here with us tonight, and I'll turn it over to you.
Hi, thank you all for joining. Just going to kind of reiterate with what the council member said. A lot of this is, I believe that education is power. And so the more we can understand what is normal coyote behavior, it'll help to hopefully alleviate some of your concerns with seeing them in your neighborhoods, which I'm sure you all have. I also want to empower all of you by the end of this presentation as to what actions you all can take to protect yourself and your loved ones if you encounter a coyote. All right. I'm going to go ahead and get my slides up. So just bear with me one moment while I deal with that technology. All right, hopefully you all can now see my screen. We're gonna start off the presentation, like I said, going over a little bit of information about coyotes, what is normal behavior for them. So they are indigenous to this area. They are considered a natural animal here, including in the areas that are more urban, more suburban, and more wild. They are very adaptable as a species, and so you can find them in all of those locations. They're a close cousin to our companion dogs, and on average, they're 20 to 30 pounds. Some of them can get up to 60 pounds, but those are more found on the East Coast. Ours are on a little bit smaller size. Their primary diet consists of rodents, rabbits, and squirrels, but they are opportunistic hunters. So if they see the opportunity to get their paws on something else, like fruit from a fruit tree in your backyard or an open trash can, they will go ahead and eat that. They do sometimes eat insects and other vegetation in the area as well. But again, their primary diet is the rodents, rabbits, and squirrels. The gestation period for females is about 63 days, and they're sterile about 10 months of the year. Males are sterile for about 8 months of the year, and they tend to have 6 to 8 pups. Usually only 2 out of those 6 to 8 pups survive until the fall. So not a very large success rate for moms raising their pups. In captivity, they might live 13 to 15 years, but in the wild, as our ones here have, as you've seen, they usually die by about 3 years, and only 60% of them survive the first year. All right, they have different kind of territorial seasons. Their mating season is January through March. Their denning season is April through August. So that's kind of what we're in right now. If you've seen any coyote pups in your neighborhood or in the brush, that's because moms are currently denning and raising them. Some of you might have seen juvenile coyotes, maybe coyotes that look a little bit smaller than the normal size. Those are pups that have started to grow up, that were born a little bit earlier in the year. And really, those pups are learning how to be an independent adult coyote from about April to December. Most of our coyote attacks against domestic animals, because they will go after cats and dogs and other domestic animals if they find the opportunity to do that. Most attacks occur kind of between April to December. Some of that is because it's young coyotes who are learning what is a appropriate diet and food source for them. And so if they see a small animal that they think maybe is similar to a rabbit or a squirrel or something that they usually eat, they might try to go after that and attempt to get food. So a lot of our attacks tend to be younger coyotes doing that. Some of it also has to do with defensive space. So coyotes become more territorial during this April through December season when they are raising their pups, especially when the pups are really little, and they're more willing to defend their space and especially protect where they have their pups hidden. They often can be considered a public nuisance, just kind of by being seen, and they are very, very highly adaptive to the environment. You can see coyotes in Los Angeles and in Chicago. So they can be seen amongst skyscrapers. Irvine, we have a lot of beautiful landscaping and green belts and open spaces, which they love to get to. But a lot of their food sources are spread out amongst those open spaces in order to cover enough ground for them to have the appropriate diet. They usually have to go through our neighborhoods and the other types of development that we have created through this open space where they used to live. Okay. But like I said, they will eat pretty much anything they can get their paws on, which is why they're one of the species that instead of going extinct because we have moved into their areas where they used to live, they actually will find ways to adapt and to thrive. There's some key kind of coyote myths that I want to address. A lot of people are unfamiliar that coyotes being out during the day, totally normal. They will be out at any time of the day. You can see them during any time of the day or night. It's not like they're just nocturnal. They tend to do most of their hunting when it's a little bit cooler, but that's to conserve their energy. It's not because they're afraid of the daylight or they don't want to come out during the daylight. If it's cool enough out, they will do their hunting. And like I said, they are so adaptable and they are opportunistic eaters. So if they see the opportunity, even if it is hot out, even if it is daylight, they will take that opportunity. Okay. One of the other myths is that coyotes are being seen more often or they're becoming more bold and brazen. We track a lot of coyote movement and behavior within our city, and the statistics don't really support that they are becoming more bold or more brazen or more aggressive. It's just that they tend to move through different areas throughout the city. And so whereas you might have lived in Irvine for 25 or 30 years and never seen a coyote, there might be some coyotes now in your area that in a few years might have moved on to a different section of the city and vice versa. And then people in that area will start seeing more coyotes. So it's not really like there's more in our city in general or they're becoming more aggressive. We have about the same number of coyote encounters that we typically get. And like I said, those coyote numbers where they have conflicts with our domestic animals tend to spike during the season where where the parents are raising their pups and they're trying to learn how to be a coyote and what their proper food source is. Coyotes can jump 6-foot fences or higher. So I think there's a misconception. A lot of our attacks happen in the backyards with domestic animals. And so a lot of people are unaware that even a 6-foot fence, a coyote can pretty easily jump over. If it's higher than 6 feet and there's a ledge or something else, they will jump off the ledge and then jump over the fence and they can jump into a backyard. There's also a misconception that coyotes can't swim. They can, in fact, swim. We don't see them in the water very often. It's very uncommon to see them swimming, but they can swim and they can jump those very high fences, which means they're able to easily get in and out of yards if they wanted to. Coyotes are masters of going unnoticed when they don't want to be seen. So they are probably more often around you than you are even aware of. They're really good at concealing themselves behind any sort of brush or landscaping or anything like that. One of the reasons we recommend for people to cut back their landscaping as much as possible, keep everything up to date, is so that they have more visibility. So if a coyote is in your backyard or if a coyote is on your walking path that you usually take, you have the visibility to take the proper actions I'm going to explain later because you know the coyote's there. What's a little bit more difficult is if you don't see the coyote, if you don't know they're there, it's harder to take some of those precautions. So here's some of our recommendations. First and foremost, please keep your pets inside. If you have domestic cats, we cannot force you or tell you you have to keep your cat inside. But we do have attacks of coyotes against domestic cats that are outside. They're indoor outdoor cats or just outdoor cats. We do recommend keeping those cats inside and indoors if possible. If you have a small dog, especially, don't leave them unattended in a backyard, even if you have a 6-foot fence. I don't necessarily recommend doggy doors, allowing them to go in and out at their own free will, because then they're out there unsupervised. These coyote attacks against domestic dogs in their own backyard can happen very, very quickly. Even if you're inside just preparing your dog's meal or something else, it can happen very fast. So don't leave your small pets unattended at any point in time. Make sure you keep your dogs on leash. The other time we seem to have incidences is when dogs are off leash in the park, especially, again, little smaller dogs. Coyotes, again, if they're in the area, they will take the opportunity if they feel like they have the opportunity to catch a meal. And so we don't want your dog, your loved one, to be part of that. So keep your dogs on leash. Not to mention, it is against our Irvine Municipal Code. It is against the law in Irvine to have your dog off leash in an open area. Do not leave food outside. So you might like to feed your pet outside. The coyotes are able to kind of smell which houses have pets that live there. So they are attracted to the dog food or the cat food or any of that that's outside. So if you can feed your pets inside, if you have any sort of fruit trees that could provide extra food for coyotes as well, make sure you keep those as cleaned up as possible, the fruit off the ground, so that's not an extra attractant for them. Security of your garbage cans. So if you live in a condo complex or apartment complex that has those large trash bins, make sure if you're throwing your trash away that they're back enclosed. Not only do those things attract coyotes, but they also attract a lot of the other animals like the rodents that then attract the coyotes. So it's kind of twofold there. And then do not feed the coyotes. We have some people that are under the misconception that if they put food out for coyotes, that their coyotes will not eat their pets and instead eat the food that is specifically designated for them. Coyotes have no idea that you're specifically designated food for them. If they see the opportunity, they will take that opportunity. So all that is doing, if you put food out, even if you're putting food out to feed the stray cats, which is also illegal, but if you're putting food out in any way, shape, or form, it could be attracting the smaller animals, which then attract the coyotes, or it could attract the coyote itself to that area. All that's going to do is encourage them that this area where there is plenty of food around is a good place for them to hunt and a good place for them to be because it is a good food source. So we want to limit all access to any extra food sources that coyote might encounter when he goes through your neighborhood. Removal tends not to work, and there's a few different reasons. Trapping often catches only the old, sick, or inexperienced coyotes, so it essentially leaves behind the stronger coyotes and the coyotes that are better hunters. And those coyotes will breed, causing even stronger coyotes who are better hunters. So trapping doesn't seem to work in terms of that way. Ultimately, if we were to trap and remove coyotes from the population, they're so adaptable that their population numbers will jump back up. So if there's not enough food for mama coyote during that gestation period, she might have a smaller litter. If there's plenty of food because the coyote population has decreased because of, I'm sorry, hang on one second while the phone is ringing. If the coyote population numbers have decreased during that year, allowing for more food for mom, she might have a bigger litter of pups. So ultimately, all that trapping and taking the coyotes away from the population does is it's a very temporary fix. The coyote population will bounce back on its own as bigger and bigger litters survive to become adult coyotes in that area. Not to mention, it is actually illegal per the state of California for us to trap and relocate coyotes. So we are not allowed to do that per state law. All right. Oh, and in terms of those reproductive rates going up, where I said mom might have more pups in that next season because there's plentiful food, it can go up as much as 70%. Okay. Coyotes can be territorial. Removing pairs opens up for kind of floaters looking for a territory. Those coyotes are often young and inexperienced. The young and inexperienced coyotes tend to be the ones that go after our domestic animals in the backyards, like I said, as they're looking for what their appropriate food source is. We recommend if you see a coyote to haze them. So hazing, essentially be big, loud, and bad. Make yourself appear to be bigger and stronger and crazier than the coyote. You can make yourself look big by standing up tall, waving your arms, making noise. That includes clapping your hands. I jingle my keys at them. A lot of times we have our keys on us in our purse, whatever else. Jangling your keys at them can sometimes work. I know some people keep a whistle with them or an air horn. If you're walking at night with your dogs, carry a flashlight. You can always shine the flashlight at them. Hazing essentially means startling or scaring the coyotes. You might have to try a few different things before whatever technique you're using works for that coyote. Because they're so adaptable, if the same person does the same exact thing every single time they see them, they will get used to it. So for example, regular noises of people talking, they're not going to be scared away by that because they hear that all the time. So you need to do something that's kind of unique and different that they don't see all the time, that scares them and makes them go away from you. They're probably not going to run away. They'll probably just look at you and trot away or walk away, just to create distance from themselves and you. If you are walking a small pet, we recommend picking up that small pet with you and then being big and loud and scary seeming for the coyote. Don't run away from the coyote. That can trigger potentially a chase response in the coyote. You can walk away slowly if you feel like you need to retreat. If you see a coyote in your backyard, you can use a squirt gun or a garden hose. Spray water at them. That way you can keep your distance. No one's telling you to go hands-on with the coyote or to touch it in any way, shape, or form. Just act really big and loud. Spray your garden hose at them. Department of Fish and Wildlife for California actually recommends like half water, half ammonia if you're able to do that in a squirt gun, but really just a regular garden hose should probably scare them enough. They don't want to get wet. Their goal is to retreat from you. I think some people think that coyotes are looking to go after our children or us. We do not look like a food source to a coyote. So it's not that a coyote bite to a human can never happen. It can, it's possible, but they're not looking at us as a source of food. Usually when people have encounters with a coyote, it's because that person is walking a small dog or they're with a small pet. And in the process of the coyote trying to get the small animal, the human's trying to protect their loved one, their pet. And that's how that encounter occurs. So feel free to use those measures that you're comfortable taking to haze them out of the area and scare them away. Okay. If you observe a coyote, like I said, we do keep track of the coyotes in the area. Our field office phone number is the one listed on the screen. We also keep track via email, so you're welcome to report to us. Essentially what we need is the day, the time when you saw the coyote, and the location, so the address or the cross streets. It's helpful also if you indicate whether the coyote is sick, like if it has mange. A lot of our coyotes in Irvine do have mange, which is where they tend to look like they have hair loss. They might look like a burned dog. They might have kind of more floppier ears from shaking. The mange is itchy for the coyotes. They itch at their fur, they scratch off their fur, and it causes these open kind of wounds, these red sores. Some people call it in as a coyote that was hit by a vehicle. Usually it's not unless you saw the coyote get hit by a vehicle or it's laying in the middle of the road. If it's fully mobile but it's got these red sores, it probably has mange. So it's helpful for us we keep track of the ones that are sick. If you see a coyote that's injured and you need us to come handle that, please call our field office as well. You can always call the Irvine Police Department Dispatch Center. There's someone there to answer 24/7. They handle both emergency and non-emergency calls, and they can get a hold of us if one of us is on duty and available right away if you think it's something that one of us needs to respond to right then and there. Okay. Let me put back my screen. That concludes the portion of the presentation I have. I think now maybe we're moving on to Q&A. I'm sure you guys have questions and I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you so much, Officer Garcia, for that informative presentation. You shared a lot of really helpful tips and information to keep in mind when coyotes are spotted. We do have a couple questions already. The first one is for a coyote, from their perspective, what is considered a small dog, one that they may be likely to go towards?
I would say anything we would consider probably a small or medium-sized dog is a potential food source for a coyote that they would be looking at. Some of these attacks to domestic dogs are, again, because these coyotes are young and inexperienced. So they might go after a dog that's on the little larger size because they don't quite realize what an appropriate size meal for them is and all of that. So it could be like, I would say 50 pounds and below. There are instances where coyotes get territorial to larger dogs, especially if you're dealing with like a mama coyote who's protecting her pups. She might particularly focus on being aggressive towards a larger dog that's walking by because maybe the smaller dog she looks at as prey and doesn't see as a threat. But a larger dog, like a German Shepherd, a Lab, something like that, walking close to her den, she might feel threatened by that type of dog next to her pups. And so it's not necessarily that you only have to worry about your smaller dogs. Also be careful of your larger dogs, especially during that time of season where coyotes are going to be a little bit more territorial. If you know there's a mama coyote with her pups in there, if you're able to just walk across the street to another sidewalk and continue your walk that way, we do recommend some of that.
Thank you for that answer. We do have another question. I know specifically District 5 has the San Diego Creek Trail. There's a lot of interconnected parks and green belts that are really close to the homes of residents. Are these areas frequent travel routes for coyotes? And how does that affect how residents should be thinking if they're out walking their dog along those trails?
Absolutely. The green belts and the San Diego Creek trails, I would say for all of our wildlife, but especially our coyotes, are going to use all of those as travel corridors and to get to different food sources that they have throughout the city or areas that they feel like are good areas to hunt. And so, but I wouldn't necessarily say be more careful if you're on the San Diego Creek bed walking or be more careful on your green belt because we've had instances, right, where people have encounters in their backyard. We have instances where people have had encounters when they're surrounded by buildings and it doesn't look like there's a ton of landscaping, but there's just enough bushes and brush for the coyotes to be hiding. So because they're so adaptable, I don't want to give anybody the false sense that they are any more safe in an area that's more urban than they are in an area that's more wild. I think coyotes are part of our reality here in the city. And so I would always be cautious and take these precautions and just be cognizant that they're there. So as you're walking your small animal, look around, right? Make sure there's nothing in the brush. Instead of, I've seen people walk their dogs and they're texting on their phone. Think of coyotes like dogs. Our dogs are really, really good at being able to read human expression and behavior. And so they know when you're distracted. They know when your back is turned to your dog and your dog is on an extended leash and your dog's now 30 or 50 feet away from you. They know that that's maybe enough room for them to do something about that and to take the opportunity to prey on your animal.
Thank you. I have another question from a resident who says that they have a coyote who often comes to their back gate around 7 a.m. Sounds like it's frequent. And they have a small dog that they keep inside. But they're wondering if there's a way for them to discourage the coyote from coming around their house. I know you mentioned, making sure that there's no food outside, especially like any dog food. But do you have any other advice for that?
It's kind of dependent on whether or not they're seeing that coyote when they're there, like when they're home, or whether they're away from their house and they're seeing it on their Ring camera or something like that. So if they're there, there's more actionable things that they can do. So if you're able to get that squirt gun, get that water hose, squirt it, squirt it down when it's there and you see it, that'll send a really loud and clear message. You're not going to injure or hurt the coyote, but it is not going to want to be there. A lot of times they stay in places because they feel comfortable or that place is a source of food. And so remove those food sources. If you see it, haze it out of there. I've had people take pots and pans. You can stay inside your house and just open up the windows and bang pots and pans. It makes a really startling, loud, horrendous noise. The coyote is going to be scared of that. And that way you don't have to go hands-on. You don't have to actually approach them or touch them or anything like that. You just want to startle them away. Do that consistently a few times, that along with removing any food sources, and that coyote should move on.
Thank you. And I see Eduardo has a question that he's holding up, which is how many sightings do you see a year in Irvine? I'm not sure if you have that exact number. And are there any particular neighborhoods that you happen to see them in?
I don't have that number. So I don't want to guess. I don't want to make a guess and be off in terms of that. What I do know, I mean, that number is a number that can be calculated, absolutely, because we keep track of sightings. We'd just have to run through the system and do that calculation. But I can tell you, we probably get calls, I want to say 5 to 15 calls a day dealing with coyotes throughout the city. That's not to say that those are calls with a coyote encounter with a domestic animal. Some of those are, hey, there's an injured coyote. Some of those are, hey, there's a coyote here. Can you help me come haze it out of my backyard? Some of those are attacks, but for the most part, it's just sightings. So multiple calls a day. Yeah, multiple calls a day. We can try and run those numbers. I think my supervisor has access to that system. And if that's something that you guys are interested in, we're happy to calculate that and figure that out for you in terms of that. Neighborhoods, what we see more, I don't know if there's a neighborhood that we see more. I can tell you in the last couple of weeks, we've had more sightings in X, Y, and Z neighborhood, but in 3 weeks from now, that'll have shifted. And so I'm not sure how much value telling you where we've seen them in the last couple of weeks is to you, because it does shift. And the coyotes just traverse such a big territory going throughout those green belts and the San Diego Creek Trail that it's really throughout all of Irvine. I couldn't even tell you like it's more in Portola, more University, more in Crop. It's really all throughout different areas.
Thank you. Yeah, that number per day is more than I would have expected. So that's really interesting. Our next question is going to be, someone has noticed that when crows are making a lot of noise, a coyote is sometimes near. Are the crows a reliable alert to a coyote maybe being nearby in the area?
Crows are like our best friend in terms of alerting us for all sorts of animal things. So not just coyotes. And we handle all sorts of animal calls, respond to a lot of animal calls. Whenever we can't find something, if I see the crows making noise, I will head towards the crows, because almost guaranteed they are reporting to me that there's an injured animal here, there's a coyote, there's something. Crows are very territorial themselves, and so they're very social. They will tell each other that there is an animal in their territory and whatnot. So I would say crows are reliable in so much as they do communicate when there's coyotes and other things in their territory, but it's not always coyotes. They could be reporting something entirely different.
Thank you. We have another question. We'll probably be wrapping up questions in the next 5 to 10 minutes or so. So everyone, if you do have a question, please submit it now. Our next question is, can you use pepper spray or something similar against coyotes?
That is a good question. I would recommend that you do not. If you have ever had experience with pepper spray, it goes everywhere. So unless you are prepared to also be pepper sprayed and have a coyote in your area, I wouldn't recommend it. It's really hard to ensure that pepper spray only gets on the target that you want it to get on. And you could then so say a coyote's in your backyard trying to get your dog. You might then pepper spray your dog. You might be pepper sprayed yourself. And now you're trying to defend your backyard from a coyote while also dealing with the effects of pepper spray. I don't recommend that as a very useful tool. If you feel that's something that you need to do, then yeah, I mean, you can take the necessary actions you need to take to protect, your loved ones within the legal, within what's legal, but I wouldn't recommend pepper spray as a very good tool. I think a water hose, which is a garden hose, which is something most of us have in our yards or access to, or a squirt gun or something like that, which is relatively inexpensive, is going to be much more effective and less likely to harm you or the ones around you. And then you have to deal with that as well.
Thank
I,
you.
I do have a question. I actually encountered a few years ago, I had a little Shih Tzu, and that Shih Tzu will run out of my door every time he needed to go out before me. And at night, he will disappear behind apartments. And from time to time, I will see a coyote after my little Shih Tzu, but it was more like a playful behavior. I I mean, I'm surprised that my Shih Tzu never got eaten because he will run into the darkness and disappear for like a minute or two and then come back running and the coyote after my Shih Tzu. Do they display that kind of behavior from time to time?
Yeah, I would say especially the pups that are still trying to figure out life. And they can sometimes be big, right? So we have coyote pups that are smaller, but some of them are juveniles who look kind of like an adult coyote. And they might display that playful behavior. I would not count on it though. I think your Shih Tzu is very lucky. I am so glad nothing adverse happened during any of those incidences. So do not count on that. Yeah, it is possible for them to show that playful behavior. But for the most part, once they figure out what your dog is and that they can maybe eat it as a food source, we don't want them to take that opportunity.
We have one more question regarding pets. This participant understands that Irvine has a 6-foot leash law, but they want to know why longer flexi leashes are tolerated. I think they're talking about the ones that, expand, especially given the coyote danger for dogs.
So I'm guessing, and this could be a misinterpretation of the question, I'm guessing that tolerated is indicating that we don't tend to cite people for the leash law, even though they're technically in violation when they use a leash like that. Maybe that's what that means. So it is against the law to have a flexible leash like that because the rule is a 6-foot leash. But usually when we cite, right, we take in the totality of whatever we're experiencing when we issue a citation or when we approach someone about the leash law, right? If we feel like it's a situation for education and to provide a verbal warning of the dangers of having that type of leash, and education is going to get compliance because someone's now going to understand, hey, this is why this law is in place, is not only to protect your animal from coyotes from being in such a long leash, but to protect your animal from walking into the street and getting run over by a car, to protect your animal from other dogs, protect people from your dog if it's on an extendable leash like that. You just don't have the proper control. We take a lot of dog bite reports all the time. And so in terms of tolerated, I think most of the time when we approach someone that has a leash like that, it's from the focus of trying to educate the community of the dangers for not only the public, but your own pet. When, we take usually the stance of education first, I think, before we go to look for citing someone for that aspect of the leash law. And I'd say most people probably are not aware that that aspect of the leash law exists. And they think that their dog is on a leash. And even if it's 50 feet away from them, that it still qualifies, even though it is against the municipal code.
Thank you. And before we wrap up, is there anything else that you would like to add? Any most important tip or advice or one last thing that you would like to leave residents with?
Sure. I think just those, if you see a coyote, instead of taking a picture of it or taking a video of it, if it's on your property, I mean, if it's far away, if it's in the creek bed, that's fine. But if it's on your property, haze it away from your property. Okay. If it's directly on your grass, we get lots of calls where someone's like, I've got this coyote, it's sunbathing in front of my door. It's not leaving. Make it uncomfortable, right? Make it leave, make those loud noises, spray that water at it, whatever you need to do. If it's public property, it's a little bit different, right? But make sure your property is secure so that you can protect your loved ones who are there, and discouraging coyotes from specifically setting up shop on your front porch, okay? And then just make sure your dogs are attended in the backyard. and your animals are kept inside as much as possible if you can't attend them in the backyard.
Thank you for that. We did have one last question come in since we, yes.
Officer Garcia, I wanted to ask you also this. How about a pack of coyotes? I have also in instances because I walk a lot in the creek, as you can see, coyotes are there. Also with my Shih Tzu, I got a pack of coyotes following us. Another time in Quail Hill, I hear a coyote calling other coyotes, and I was just walking with my granddaughter. So, what do we do when we encounter a pack of coyotes?
Yeah, and they do sometimes operate in packs. They're not always solo. Usually packs are maybe the coyote and its mate, as well as maybe some of the pups that they're raising together. Or it could be a mom with some of her older pups. And so you do sometimes have these groups of coyotes that are going around. The same techniques for the most part apply, right? So you still want to haze them. You still want to appear to be bigger and louder than them. If you are walking, any time of the day in these areas that are further away from people where you don't think you can get any assistance from anyone, make sure you carry an air horn, make sure you carry those other things that you need to on you. Some people walk with a walking stick, so that way if a coyote happens to get close, right, they can create some distance by moving the walking stick around and keep that distance. It's kind of like with when we deal with vicious or aggressive dogs, you're giving that animal something else to bite onto that is not you and that is not your animal, right? So now you have the walking stick. That's that other thing. Here, you can bite onto the walking stick and I'm going to leave and make sure I'm safe and my pets and loved ones are safe.
Okay, we have one last question. Have coyotes been tagged for tracking? And I would love to hear if you could explain a little bit more. I know you mentioned that you do track numbers of coyotes. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about what that process looks like for animal services.
So what our unit does is different than Department of Fish and Wildlife. In terms of tracking, what you're probably thinking with tagging coyotes for tracking, that will be more Department of Fish and Wildlife through the state, where they might be tracking at the state level and tagging wildlife for so that their biologists can check on numbers and that sort of thing. We don't do anything like that. So we do not trap and tag coyotes. That's not something our department does, not something we're really allowed to do. We track coyotes through all of y'all through sightings. So whenever you send us a sighting through the phone or through that email, that's where we gather our data from, as well as the calls for service that come into dispatch where people report there. And so we compile all of that together.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Officer Garcia, for sharing all of this information. It's super, super helpful and informative. And we will have a recording of this meeting available for participants to rewatch. It's going to be on Councilmember Martinez Franco's YouTube channel, and we'll also send out an email with the link to all participants after the event. And I'd like to go ahead and just turn it back over to Councilmember Betty Martinez Franco to say a last few words.
Yes, thank you so much. And one fun fact, I was talking to someone at Woodbridge, and they mentioned that apparently there is more nuisance with the geese than the coyotes, that to the point that they build statues of coyotes and they put them in the middle of places to scare the geese, but the geese got so used to the little statues that now they're going around it. So, and I also heard that the coyotes are scared of the geese because the geese can be very aggressive as well in some nesting times. So, I mean, we live in wildlife. I have learned to appreciate like this coyote in San Diego Creek. And you walk over there, you're gonna see a bunch of wildlife, and it's very interesting. But we have to be careful with our little pets and stay in our distance. So yeah, thank you so much, Officer Garcia, for such an informative presentation and for taking time to answer our residents' questions tonight. I hope everyone is living with a better understanding of coyotes and, more importantly, feeling more prepared and confident about what to do if you encounter one in your neighborhood. I want to thank Irvine Police Department Animal Services for partnering with my office to make tonight's presentation possible. And I also want to thank Mary Fuji for helping us coordinate and host this virtual event. Most importantly, thank you to all of you for taking the time to join us, ask questions, and learn more about how we can safely coexist with the wildlife that is part of our community. Please continue to share what you learned tonight with your family, friends, and neighbors. The more informed we are as a community, the better prepared we are. So thank you again for joining us, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your evening.